It began, like so many tragedies in the coldest corners of the Earth, with a promise of discovery. The Aurora Expedition, as it was called, was meant to be a straightforward scientific mission. 6 researchers, 2 pilots, and a support team bound for the eastern edge of the Greenland ice sheet. Their goal was to study glacial caverns newly exposed by shifting ice patterns. It was the winter of 1983, and the world was gripped by a fascination with the unknown, a time when adventure still meant danger, and maps still had blank spaces. They departed from Thudi Air Base on a cloudless morning. A small convoy of snowcats and modified transports crawled across the endless white, their engines growling against the wind. Among them was Dr. Helen Ward, a climatologist known for her calm precision and unwavering curiosity. There was also Eric Dahl, a geologist with a fascination for ancient structures, and a young radio operator, Mason Clark, whose journal would later become the only surviving record of what happened out there. For the first 3 days, their progress was steady. Temperatures plunged below -40 degrees Celsius, but morale was high. They set up their temporary base near a line of ridges where satellite imagery had detected unusual magnetic readings. The ice here was older, denser, layered like glass, each strata holding centuries of frozen history. On the morning of the 4th day, while performing a routine seismic scan, they detected something impossible. A void, nearly rectangular, buried beneath 20 meters of solid ice. The sensors outlined perfect symmetry, straight edges, sharp corners. Not a cave, not a fissure. Something carved, something constructed. At first, Helen believed it to be an error, an echo or an artifact of the instruments reacting to the cold. But Eric insisted they investigate. He said, "The ice doesn't carve itself," half smiling through the frost clinging to his beard. That night, as the aurora shimmered faintly green across the horizon, they marked the location and prepared to drill. What happened next survives only through Mason Clark's radio logs. His words are fragmented, sometimes incoherent, but they tell enough of the story to piece together the truth, or at least what might have been the truth. On the second night of drilling, just after midnight, the drill struck something hard, harder than ice, with a hollow resonance. They switched to manual tools, clearing frost away until the shape emerged. A vertical surface, smooth, slightly curved inward, covered with carvings. The floodlights reflected faintly off what looked like obsidian, though it was buried deep in the glacier. The carvings were geometric, repeating triangles, circles, and intersecting lines, like an ancient script frozen mid-sentence. And at the center of it all, set into the smooth black surface, was a doorway. No frame, no hinges, just a perfect outline of a door, sealed shut by time and pressure. Eric ran his gloved hand across it and said quietly, "This shouldn't be here." When they returned to camp that night, Mason recorded a strange sound on the radio, a low, rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat through static. It repeated every 37 seconds, steady and mechanical. He assumed it was interference from the drilling equipment until it continued even after the machines were shut down. The next morning, their compass readings were off by nearly 20 degrees, and the magnetic equipment showed violent fluctuations around the site. The team debated whether to continue. Helen wanted to document and leave the site undisturbed, but Eric, driven by something between curiosity and obsession, refused to stop. He said, "We came here to see what's beneath. If we turn back now, no one will believe this exists." By the 6th day, they had cleared enough ice to expose the entire surface of the structure. It wasn't just a wall. It was part of something much larger, buried deep within the glacier, a facade leading to an unknown interior. The black surface absorbed light instead of reflecting it, swallowing the glow of their lamps. In photographs, it appeared as a flat silhouette, a shadow that refused to show detail. When they touched it, it felt colder than the surrounding ice, a dry, biting cold that numbed the skin instantly. That evening, as the wind howled over the ridge, Mason's log mentions that Eric and one other researcher, Dr. Lavoie, stayed behind to take thermal scans. Around 2:15 a.m., Helen was awakened by the sound of shouting through the comms channel. Eric's voice, distorted by static, repeating, "It opened." When the rescue team reached the ridge 15 minutes later, the drill lights were still on, flickering weakly through blowing snow. The wall, the black surface, was now split down the center, revealing a narrow vertical opening. A faint mist drifted from it, curling upward like breath in the cold. Eric and Lavoie were nowhere to be found. Their gear lay scattered around the site, their footprints leading into the dark gap and stopping abruptly at the threshold. No footprints returned. Helen wanted to call it in, to mark the site, to evacuate, but the radio signal was gone. Every channel was consumed by that same low pulse, louder now, almost resonant enough to feel through the ground. The aurora above had intensified, burning crimson and green, shifting in strange, unnatural waves. Mason's final entry from that night reads, "The door, it hums when we stand near it, like something alive. We can't see inside, the light doesn't reach past the opening. Eric's camera feed went dead when he crossed the threshold. Helen says we leave at dawn. I think it's too late." The next morning, the weather turned catastrophic. Whiteout conditions buried their camp under a storm that lasted for nearly 48 hours. When a search team finally reached the site 2 weeks later, there was nothing left. No equipment, no tracks, no shelter, only a patch of disturbed snow and ice. The ridge where they had drilled was sealed again, the surface smooth and untouched, as if it had never been opened. The coordinates Mason had recorded led to an unbroken sheet of ice. But there was one anomaly, one piece of evidence that kept the investigation open for years. Nearly 60 miles away, at an unmanned weather station, a faint transmission was detected on a private frequency. It lasted for 23 seconds. A single repeating phrase, distorted by static, spoken in Mason's voice. "Still here. The light is wrong. Still here." The recording was dismissed as atmospheric interference, the product of signal bounce in polar conditions. But for those who listened closely, another sound could be heard beneath the static. That same low pulse, the same heartbeat, buried in the ice. And so, like the wind that sweeps endlessly over the Arctic, the legend of the Aurora Expedition became another ghost story, whispered among researchers, explorers, and those who believe that not everything beneath the ice is meant to be found. When official records close, legends begin to breathe on their own. Years passed and the story of the Aurora Expedition slipped quietly out of public memory. There were no headlines, no public inquiries, just a few missing persons notices and a sealed report filed under the Polar Research Division. Yet, in the cold margins of those documents, a mystery lingered. Unspoken, but never forgotten. By the early 1990s, whispers began to spread through scientific circles. Field researchers in Greenland spoke of strange radio anomalies in the same region where the Aurora team had disappeared. Transmissions carrying short bursts of rhythmic pulses, identical in frequency to Mason Clark's final recording. Even more unsettling, a few explorers claimed that satellite thermal scans occasionally showed faint rectangular patterns beneath the ice, as though something solid and warm existed far below the frozen surface. Each time the area was investigated, the readings vanished. One of the few who refused to let the story die was a journalist named Simon Harrow. Harrow had covered expeditions, aviation crashes, and remote disappearances for decades. In 1997, he stumbled upon declassified fragments of the Aurora files while researching another case. The data was sparse: coordinates, missing personnel lists, and a brief mention of unidentified subglacial architecture. It was enough to pull him north. He assembled a small crew, a cameraman, a survival expert, and an ex-military pilot. They planned to retrace the Aurora Expedition's path, documenting every stage on film. But unlike the original team, they had no permits, no government oversight, only curiosity, and a growing sense that something had been deliberately hidden. Their footage, later recovered from a damaged camera found adrift near the coast, paints a grim and fragmented picture. The first week of the expedition seems normal. Stunning aerial shots of endless white plains, the soft wail of the wind, radio chatter filled with laughter and optimism. But on the sixth day, the tone shifts. The wind becomes sharper, the camera begins to tremble, and the GPS, modern, precise, starts to fail. It loops back, marking locations they've already passed, showing them moving in circles. On the seventh day, their flight logs record a visual anomaly. A black fracture in the ice, visible from above, running for hundreds of meters, unnaturally straight, like a scar drawn by human hands. When they landed to investigate, they found the fracture led to a depression in the ice, a narrow valley shaped like a spiral. At its center lay a ridge, low and jagged, dusted with fine snow. And there, buried halfway in frost, was a smooth black surface, curved and reflective. They approached cautiously, filming every step. Harrow's voice, steady until that point, begins to waver. "This isn't ice," he says on tape. It's something else." His breath catches. It's warm. The footage stops for several hours. When it resumes, it's night. The camera shakes violently, pointed toward the sky where the aurora flares crimson and violent, unnaturally fast, flickering like a broken film reel. Someone is shouting indistinct words, then the audio collapses into static, and the rhythmic pulse begins again. The pulse grows louder until the tape cuts to black. When rescue teams arrived weeks later, they found the helicopter half buried in snow, the fuselage twisted but intact. There were no bodies. The only item left untouched was a journal inside a sealed weatherproof case. The handwriting belonged to Simon Harrow. His final entry was written in erratic strokes, as though his hand trembled uncontrollably. "The ice moves. It breathes. We thought it was stone, but it opens when the light bends. There's something inside, not human, not machine. It listens. When it opened last night, the cold stopped. For a moment, there was no sound, no wind, no pulse, just silence. Then I saw something through the gap, not darkness, light. But it wasn't ours." The journal ends mid-sentence. The ink trails off the page as though he was pulled away before finishing the thought. For years after, the Greenlandic locals spoke of strange weather patterns in that same region. Snowstorms forming in minutes, compasses spinning, and distant booms echoing beneath the ice. The Danish Meteorological Institute dismissed these reports as natural glacial shifts.
Yet the indigenous hunters who roamed those areas long before modern maps existed told older stories. Legends of the Cold Door, the Frozen Gate, a place the sky spirits sealed long ago. They said that those who tried to open it never returned because what lay beyond wasn't meant for warmth or life. These myths predate the modern age by centuries. The Inuit oral histories mention a hole in the white world, a passage to Salat Nunat, the land of silence, where time stops and the world remembers its creation. In every version of the tale, the warning is the same. Do not disturb the ice when it sings. When asked about this in a 2002 documentary, an elder named Naja Ivalu simply said, "There are doors in this world, and there are doors that look back." Today, satellite images of that region remain inconclusive. Every few years, new data emerges, a strange heat signature, a magnetic storm, a sudden loss of transmission from passing weather drones. And though no one officially acknowledges it, several expeditions have quietly avoided that sector of the ice sheet. Somewhere in the endless silence of the Arctic, buried under centuries of shifting frost, something waits. Whether it's a remnant of a forgotten civilization, an alien relic, or something far older than the Earth itself, no one knows. The door carved into the ice has never been seen again. But those who still research the Aurora files say that sometimes, during long polar nights, when the wind drops and the air hums with electric tension, their radios pick up a faint signal on an unused channel, a single phrase broken by static, repeating endlessly in a voice that sounds impossibly human, a voice that whispers, "Still here. The light is wrong. Still here." The transmission always ends the same way, with that low pulse fading into silence, and then the cold returns, carrying with it the weight of everything humanity was never meant to find.